The studio lights of Good Morning America blazed down on the set, casting a warm glow over the polished wooden table where the hosts typically bantered with celebrity guests. Today, however, the atmosphere was anything but light. The cameras were rolling, the crew was on edge, and the audience, both in the studio and watching at home, held their breath as the tension crackled like static electricity. At the center of it all stood Sylvester Stallone, his iconic jaw clenched, his gray hair slicked back, and his eyes narrowed with a fury that seemed to echo the gritty determination of his most famous characters, Rocky Balboa and John Rambo. Across from him sat Mike Hensley, a veteran journalist known for his sharp tongue and unapologetic style. Hensley, with his silver hair and checkered blazer, leaned back in his chair, a smug smirk playing on his lips. The segment had started innocently enough, a promotional interview for Stallone's latest action film, The Last Stand, where he played a retired soldier forced back into battle. But what began as a routine chat about stunts and nostalgia had spiraled into a confrontation that neither man could back down from. It all started with a question. Hensley, flipping through his notes, had asked, "Sylvester, at 79, don't you think it's time to hang up the gloves? I mean, Rocky's had his day, and frankly, the action genre feels a bit tired with you leading it. Shouldn't you let the younger generation take the spotlight?" The studio fell silent. The co-hosts, a perky blonde named Sarah and a stoic news anchor named Daniel, exchanged uneasy glances. Stallone's publicist, seated in the wings, visibly tensed. For a moment, Stallone didn't respond. He adjusted his posture, his broad shoulders shifting under his tailored black suit, and stared at Hensley with an intensity that could have melted steel. "Mike," Stallone began, his voice low and gravelly, carrying the weight of decades in Hollywood, "I've been in this business longer than you've been asking stupid questions. Rocky's not just a character, he's a symbol. He's about heart, about never giving up. And you sitting there, judging my career like you know what it takes, that's what's tired." Hensley chuckled, a sound that grated against the silence. "Oh, come on, Sly. Symbols are great, but the box office doesn't lie. Your last few films haven't exactly set the world on fire. Maybe it's not about heart, it's about relevance." The word, relevance, hung in the air like a challenge. Stallone's fists tightened on the arms of his chair. The crew members behind the cameras leaned forward, sensing the shift. Sarah attempted to interject with a nervous laugh. "Well, let's not get too heated. Sly, tell us about the training for The Last Stand." But her voice was drowned out as Stallone leaned forward, his voice rising. "Relevance. You wanna talk relevance? I've been dragging this industry through the mud and back, making movies that people remember, while you're out here playing armchair critic. You think you could step into my shoes for one day? One fight scene, you'd be crying for your mama." Hensley's smirk faded, replaced by a flush of indignation. "I don't need to step into your shoes to see the writing on the wall, Stallone. You're a relic, a has-been clinging to glory days. The audience wants fresh faces, not a guy who's one bad stunt away from a hip replacement." That was the spark. Stallone shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You arrogant sh*t. He bellowed, the words exploding from him with the force of a punch. The phrase, plastered across the screen in bold yellow letters, seemed to freeze the moment in time. The live audience gasped, and the control room erupted into a flurry of activity as producers scrambled to decide whether to cut to commercial. Hensley stood too, his own temper flaring. "Watch your mouth, Stallone. This is a family show." "Family show?" Stallone laughed bitterly. "You started this, Mike. You wanna talk about respect? Show some first." Sarah and Daniel leapt into action, trying to play peacemakers. "Okay, let's take a break," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm as he gestured to the crew. The director's voice crackled through the earpieces, cut to ad, "Now." But the damage was done. The internet was already buzzing, clips of the outburst flooding social media within seconds. As the red light on the camera blinked off, Stallone stormed off the set, his publicist trailing behind him with a mix of panic and resignation. Hensley adjusted his blazer, muttering to himself as he retreated to the green room. The crew exchanged bewildered looks, unsure whether to laugh or panic. This was not the polished interview they'd planned. To understand how this meltdown unfolded, one had to look at the weeks leading up to the appearance. Stallone had been on a grueling press tour for The Last Stand, a film he'd poured his heart into. At 79, he'd insisted on performing many of his own stunts, defying the advice of his doctors and the concerns of his family. The movie was a passion project, a chance to prove he still had what it took to captivate audiences. But the reviews had been mixed, and the box office numbers were underwhelming. Critics praised his dedication but questioned whether his time had passed. Hensley, on the other hand, had a reputation for provocative interviews. Known for his no-nonsense approach, he'd built a career on pushing buttons, often at the expense of his guests. His recent columns had taken a particularly harsh tone toward aging action stars, arguing that Hollywood needed to make way for new talent. Stallone's name had appeared more than once in those pieces, and the actor had taken it personally. The tension had been brewing for days. Stallone's team had warned the Good Morning America producers about Hensley's style, requesting a different interviewer, but the network insisted on the matchup, citing ratings potential. Stallone, ever the professional, had agreed, until the live broadcast turned into a battlefield. Backstage, as the commercial break stretched on, Stallone paced in his dressing room. His publicist, a wiry woman named Carla with a perpetually frazzled expression, tried to calm him. "Sly, you can't let him get to you. We'll spin this, say it was a misunderstanding. The fans love your fire." "Fire," Stallone snapped, running a hand through his hair. "That guy's a leech. He doesn't care about the craft, about what I've built. He just wants his soundbite." Carla sighed. I know. But you gave him the soundbite. Let's just finish the segment, smile for the cameras, and move on. The movie needs this." Stallone glared at his reflection in the mirror, seeing not just his weathered face but the decades of struggle behind it. From the gritty streets of Philadelphia to the heights of Hollywood, he'd fought for every role, every accolade. He wasn't about to let some smug journalist tear it all down. Meanwhile, Hensley sat in the green room, sipping a glass of water and scrolling through his phone. The clip of Stallone's outburst was already trending on X, with reactions ranging from shock to amusement. "Legend loses it," one post read, while another quipped, "Rocky versus the reporter, round 1. Hensley smirked again. He knew the controversy would boost his own profile, even if it meant weathering Stallone's wrath. The aftermath. When the show returned from commercial, the mood had shifted. Sarah and Daniel took the lead, apologizing to viewers for the unexpected turn of events, and promising a lighter tone. Stallone was coaxed back onto the set, his expression a mix of defiance and restraint. Hensley rejoined as well, though the two men avoided eye contact. "Let's try this again," Sarah said brightly, turning to Stallone. "Sly, can you tell us about the inspiration behind The Last Stand?" Stallone took a deep breath, his voice steadier now. "It's about resilience," he said, glancing briefly at Hensley. "About a man who's counted out but finds a reason to keep going. That's what I've always tried to bring to my work, something real, something that hits you here." He tapped his chest. The interview limped to its conclusion, with Stallone sharing a few anecdotes about the film's production and Hensley offering a grudging nod. But the damage was irreversible. As the segment ended, Stallone stood, shook hands with Sarah and Daniel, and walked off without acknowledging Hensley. Outside the studio, the media frenzy was already underway. Paparazzi swarmed the entrance, shouting questions about the clash. "Sly, was that scripted? Mike, are you sorry?" Stallone ignored them, climbing into a waiting car with Carla, who was already drafting a statement. The statement, released later that afternoon, read, "Mr. Stallone regrets the language used during this morning's interview and apologizes to viewers. He stands by his passion for his craft and looks forward to sharing The Last Stand with audiences." Hensley, for his part, posted on X, "Tough day at the office. Respect to Stallone's legacy, but the truth hurts. Hashtag Good Morning America, hashtag Hollywood." The ripple effect. Over the next few days, the incident dominated entertainment news. Clips of the outburst looped on every channel, and late-night hosts had a field day. Jimmy Fallon reenacted the scene with a Stallone impersonator, while Trevor Noah quipped, "Sylvester Stallone proved he can still throw a punch, verbally, at least." Fan reactions were split. Some praised Stallone's fiery spirit, seeing it as a throwback to his Rocky days. "That's the Sly we love," unscripted and unapologetic. One fan tweeted. Others criticized him, calling the outburst unprofessional. Time to retire, Sly. This isn't a movie set, another wrote. The Last Stand saw a surprising uptick in ticket pre-sales, with many attributing it to the controversy. Studios took note, and Stallone's phone began ringing with offers for new projects. Hensley, meanwhile, enjoyed a surge in his own visibility, landing guest spots on talk shows to dissect the encounter. But for Stallone, the incident was a wake-up call. Sitting in his Los Angeles home that evening, watching the sunset over the Pacific, he reflected on the day. Carla had left him with a stack of scripts, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd always prided himself on control, on channeling his emotions into his roles. Today, he'd lost that control, and it stung. Yet, there was a silver lining. The outburst had reignited interest in his career, reminding people of the passion that had driven him for decades. Maybe, he thought, this wasn't the end but a new beginning. He picked up a script titled Redemption Road, about an aging fighter staging a comeback. A smile tugged at his lips. Perhaps there was one more fight left in him after all.